You've got questions, we've got answers. Welcome to the Therapist Question Box, where trauma-trained therapists tackle real questions from real people. I'm your host, Lindsay, bringing you grounded insights you can actually use, brought to you by Therapy Utah. Welcome back to another episode of the Therapist Question Box. We are here to answer your tough mental health questions, relationship questions, and everything in between. Thank you for joining us. Today I have with me Kathy Kinghorn. Kathy, thanks for being with us.
Great to be here.
And Kathy's been on the podcast quite a bit, but we're going to talk to Kathy, and I want her to introduce herself today.
Well, I'm Kathy Kinghorn. You got that right.
Yes.
I'm owner of Therapy Utah, and I specialize in sexual addiction and betrayal trauma. I love working with those populations, and I've been in the seat long enough to see how people go from just super messy marriage and relationship is on, the edge, the brink of disaster, and hard work is done, healing happens, and I have the pure honor of seeing people heal a relationship and move forward with a really beautiful life.
It's wonderful. It's why you do the work you do, right?
Yeah. Yes.
It's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, today we are going to talk about a heavy topic, a listener question about sexual assault. And Kathy has worked in this space, like she said, with couples, but also in the space of having people who have been on the other side, right, of sexual assault. And so we want to talk a little bit about that and hopefully have a really frank discussion, but also recognize it's a hard discussion. So thank you for being here to navigate this. So here's the question. I was sexually assaulted and I can't stop thinking it's my fault.
Okay.
So it is a heavy one. Let's talk about this. Why do you think a person, our listener, is concerned it's their fault?
I actually volunteered for 5 years with the Rape Crisis nonprofit, which means I went to the hospital to be with a rape victim once they reported the rape. And in that 5 years' time, once a month, 72-hour time frame, I was called out every shift. And I don't know how many victims that I sat with, but I do know this. Not one of them didn't think it was their fault. They all thought a part of it was their fault.
So regardless of the circumstance?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, one of them had a gun to her head. It was her fault in her mind. So it's not that to me. I think the reason is I truly believe in trusting your gut, and the language I would use is listening to the spirit. And I also believe don't trust your gut, and the spirit isn't always available to play red light, green light with you. So I think we have this false narrative that if I trust my gut, I'll know. I'll know where danger is and where danger is not. But the reality is, when you're a victim of sexual assault, first of all, I want to be really clear here. It is not your fault. Hard stop. It is not your fault. And if you want to stop this podcast and rewind that part of it 50 times, I want you to do that. It is not your fault. What's happened is somebody has misled you. I've spent years studying counterfeits. And we can do a different podcast on that. But there are people that show up in a counterfeit way. And as a teenager or a college student, or one of my victims was 63, so the range varied. None of them were at fault. And yet what happens is a couple of things. One is, if a part of it is our fault, then we can control it so it will never happen again. So it's a way for our brain. And then people ask you, well, didn't you notice? Like, wasn't there something off? And the fact is, the thing that makes counterfeits good is they look like the original. So if you went out on a date and somebody said, hey, where do you want to go? Well, dinner would be great. Let's go to Costa Vida. That sounds awesome. And then if you said, well, what should we do after our date? They're not going to say, well, I'm going to drive you up the canyon in the middle of winter and assault you. They're not going to say that.
Right. Not going to happen.
Not going to happen.
That's right.
And so we lean too far into trusting our gut because we think that there's not what's called confirmation bias. If somebody smiles at us, we naturally think they're friendly. If somebody looks like us, we naturally accept them a bit more than somebody that doesn't. And that's been proven. And so it's interesting how we get this false read on if my gut was wrong, then that's on me. I shouldn't have been wrong here. But the reality is, I'll give you a couple examples. Prime Minister Chamberlain, probably this is maybe ancient history for a lot of our therapists, or a lot of our viewers, might be ancient history. But before World War II started, he decided he was going to go and check out Hitler, make sure that he said what he was going to do what he said. And Hitler said, "Hey, I'm not going to invade anyone." So Prime Minister Chamberlain went over there, and he came back and quite excitedly let the whole nation know Hitler's a man of his word. Why did he feel that way about Hitler? Winston Churchill, who never met Hitler, said he's a thug. Churchill got it right, and he had no interaction with him. What about the interaction did Chamberlain have that made him trust his gut and say, this guy's good for his word? Well, a clue is in one of the statements he made. He said, Hitler gave me the double handshake, and he reserves that only for his closest friends. And Hitler was a great example of a counterfeit before the world found out who he truly was.
Wow.
So that's what I'm saying. We default to, I can tell you, my gut has been wrong in my career, in relationships, in finances, even in my I'm in academics right now. And just 3 weeks ago, I found out a year and a half in, a completely 180 on my journey, 180. And so my gut for the first year and a half seemed to be plugging right along and saying, this is the exact right path. But now I got new information and it's been confirmed to me I'm on the right path. So I think we too falsely teach our kiddos to just trust your gut or listen to the Spirit.
Yeah. So if that is the case, and you're saying, okay, sometimes we trust our gut too much, but that's what's helping keep us safe, then what are we left with, right? What does that look like when we're like, yeah, we can't put all of our eggs in that basket? What else would you say?
I would say a better message to our kids is to reinforce. My belief, my personal spiritual belief, is that there is a spirit that guides us. So I have told people many sacred stories, and we share those stories when it's the right audience, right? We share those sacred stories. So we get reinforced from those stories that we hear that guidance is there in every situation. Or we hear somebody say, I trusted my gut and, this worked out. So those stories are reinforced. But what people don't say is the times when things didn't go right and they were tricked in some way. The economy, white collar crime takes $1 trillion out of our economy a year.
Wow.
$1 trillion. And it takes it from people who are knowledgeable in the banking industry, in business, in organizations, and $1 trillion from white collar crime.
That's incredible. Wow.
Yeah.
So here's what I'm hearing is that when we share that we maybe were tricked in some way, that there was a counterfeit, that to normalize that. That's one of the things I'm hearing. Like, yes, we trust our gut, but we also recognize that there are counterfeits. Then there's been really successful counterfeits, and there are really successful counterfeits. And so to trust and recognize, yeah, that actually does happen, and recognize that's a part of the world we live in, unfortunately. So our gut is there to help us, right? But that we can also recognize that, it's not always going to keep us completely safe. That's the truth.
Right. And so how do we help put the odds in our favor, basically?
Yeah, I'd love to hear.
That's the right.
Yes.
I
How
mean,
do we do that? So I think that is the question as we go back to this listener question. I can't stop thinking it's my fault. One thing you said earlier, I think is really important, is that our brain is possibly confusing survival with responsibility, right? Your brain does what it has to survive, but does that equal responsibility? Would you say there's some confusion there that can happen?
Yeah, it's a great point, Lindsay, because think about in the moment of a sexual assault. When I worked rape crisis, there was only one assault that was not date rape out of 5 years.
Okay, that's really important what you just said, is that one assault in 5 years was not date rape. So that is the vast majority that you see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you consider that you're with somebody and you're trying to figure out, am I safe? Am I not safe? Well, actually, let me back up because I want to answer your question first about your brain. Your gut. One of the questions that the officers would ask a victim is, "Did you fight back?" Most often, if it's a female assaulted, she is strong or smaller and not as strong as the person assaulting her. And so her brain will say, to stay alive, I need to freeze. I need to get small. I just need to freeze. So her gut is saying, stay alive, which is the right thing to do, stay alive. But then the question, once the officer asks that question, can you see the implication?
For sure. Yep.
And so this viewer may or may not have gone to the police. Many individuals don't. But if they showed up in that assault and they froze, that a lot of times a victim will think, why didn't I fight back? Why didn't I do it?
And yet it's actually their brain keeping them alive.
Yes.
So congratulations. Yeah. Actually, that's what needed to happen. But when you're asked that question, it feels like maybe I didn't do enough to protect myself.
Right.
You can see how confusing that is.
So confusing.
I mean, that alone could answer this question, right? Yeah. Maybe it's because I froze, and then when I got asked, it was, no, I didn't really fight back. The truth is, you do what you got to do to keep yourself alive, period.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a really important distinction, I think, to understand.
Right.
I mean, a couple of things you just said, that all of those in 5 years were date rape. Really important. The other thing is, we do what we can to stay alive, period.
Right.
And we will be, our brain adapts. In fact, it's keeping us safe. That's what it's doing, right? And unfortunately, safety, when there's an assault happening, is not safe. But but your lowest common denominator is at least you're alive.
Right.
Correct?
Right.
Good.
Right.
So here's what I want to talk about. Tell me what healing looks like after this, right? So we're talking about why they might feel that way. I think you've given us some really good insights to that. I'm curious what healing looks like in your experience around this.
My experience is that this particular type of situation, qualified therapy is key to healing. Qualified therapy.
Tell us, why do you say qualified? What do you mean by that?
Because a lot of individuals don't understand what we were just talking about, that freeze response. And so they don't understand why you didn't fight back, for example. They don't understand why you may not choose to go through the legal process. The legal process is brutal on a victim. So they may want to push you maybe to go through the legal process. But the reality is it doesn't it doesn't necessarily create any more healing for you. They may not understand that your symptoms are trauma responses. You're hypervigilant. It happened 15 years ago, but you're still hesitant to go out with anybody that you don't know. And so it has to be, it's why our therapists at Therapy Utah are trauma informed and trauma trained, because we understand what trauma does to the physical body, your emotions, and your mind.
That's right. As you were talking, I thought that is why you go to a trauma informed therapist, right? And the therapists at Therapy Utah, they are trauma informed and trauma trained therapists, because you understand what you just said,
Mm-hmm.
that no, it actually makes sense what your body was doing. It was
Mm-hmm.
keeping you alive. This wasn't a defect. It was actually an adaptive response.
Right.
So again, I think congratulations, you're alive. That's what your body was doing.
Yeah.
And unfortunately,
Yeah.
there was a horrendous outcome of an assault, but again, you're alive. So I love that you said that. Talk to a qualified therapist that's trauma trained,
Mm-hmm.
right? With that, understanding that, I'm curious about the thoughts. I'm hearing from this question some real intrusive thoughts. I can't stop thinking it's my fault, right? I mean, I would imagine there's a lot of anxiety and also intrusive thoughts after an assault. So tell me about that. What would you give our listener, maybe some concrete tools about helping with some of these intrusive thoughts?
It's an interesting question, Lindsay, because there is a shame that a victim will carry over a part of that trauma. Like they can allow themselves to believe, well, I can see this shouldn't have happened or this or that. But then there'll be a part of it that they go, well, if you knew this, if you knew this. I'll share an example from my personal life. When I was sexually abused throughout my childhood, often the abuser would leave money. And later, when I heard what a prostitute was in my teens, I thought, oh, that's what I am. I'm a prostitute because that person left coins. And so the intrusive thoughts were, well, I'm already bad. So why not go do more bad things? You know, it took me down a path that was totally unnecessary had I have talked to anyone about it, you know? And so those intrusive thoughts, this listener likely has one that's really sticky, one that's so shameful that maybe they've told people about their experience. Maybe they've had family support, but maybe there's that one part of it that they go, if anyone knew. I mean, I was over 50 before I told anyone that part of it. And that's a lot of years to carry that particular, if you knew this, you'd understand it was my fault.
Wow. Wow. I appreciate you sharing that with us, and appreciate really that vulnerability of saying, you know, because there were coins, I thought maybe that's what it was. And, as you're talking, I just think this is why I'm sure our listener came with this question, because it feels like you said until you were 50, you didn't talk about it. Because if you only knew, then you'd know that I had a part in this. I was to blame. And that feels excruciating, because accompanying this is so much pain. Right.
And Lindsay, I guess I wasn't going to necessarily share my personal experience, but I'll share another piece of it. 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 4 boys. We got to talk about the boys that are getting sexually assaulted as well. It happens before the age of 18. And so with one particular incident with somebody else, I had been playing hide and seek, and I was sexually assaulted in the hiding place that I had found. And at that age, thankfully, I knew my mom would know. I mean, she knew when I didn't comb the back of my hair when I left for school. She knew. Magically, my mom and dad just knew if I was lying. They just knew. So I walked in after that violent attack, and my mom was so mad that I was late. I hadn't come in on time. I missed my curfew. Her gut wasn't telling her anything. The spirit wasn't letting her in on anything. So as a child, the only way to interpret it was, well, my mom does know. She knows everything. So it must have happened. She must know this is happening. So later on, when the other individuals started abusing me, I just thought my parents knew. And so I think this happens.
Really?
Because it's
so
the
heartbreaking.
only way to interpret it as a child. You're a little one trying to solve with the information you have.
Yeah.
And so with this listener's question, where she or he, this definitely could be a he that ask this question, they've got these stories in their mind that support the outcome that it's their fault, you know? And even though arguably as an adult and logically, I know my mom would have done something, my parents would have done something, it still takes a little bit of work to this day to go, yeah, they would have. Okay, I can get behind that. But that, again, going back to a trauma-informed therapist, they help you unpack those places that I guess I just call sticky.
Yeah.
You know, some things just stick longer and deeper. So
your brain just kept coming back there,
mm-hmm.
right? And again, you had a story that confirmed your narrative.
Mm-hmm.
It made sense to
mm-hmm.
you, right? Because
right.
yeah, we're meaning-making machines.
Yep.
We're trying to figure out what in the world and why. Why was she worried about curfew? Oh, well, did she know? Did she not know? But then you have to make meaning of what happened in the show up. So it makes a lot of sense that yes, a therapist can help you sort through all of that.
Right.
Especially when what I'm hearing is shame.
Yeah.
It really so much shame around an assault.
Right.
And that's, I would imagine again, where that thinking is happening, right? Some of those intrusive thoughts keep coming because they're shame-based. So
right.
we hide in shame and we stay in shame,
mm-hmm.
right? So, you know, I would love also for you to talk about resources. You know, you mm-hmm. saying that you came to the emergency room for 5 years, that's something I didn't even know happened. So mm-hmm. tell us more about, you know, if we have this listener, hopefully listening, tell us more about resources that can help people maybe right after to, you know, further on down the road.
Let me start with what can help before.
Okay.
To help, like I said, have the odds maybe more in your favor. We have a plan A, and I talk to my kids a lot about this. Here, plan A, we're going to go to a party with friends. We're going to go to the pool with friends. That's our plan A. What's your plan B? Talk to your kids early and often about what's your plan B, because then you're going to hear their line of thinking. So when I first started this with my kids, they loved the trampoline. So I said, hey guys, what plan A, you're going to go jump on the trampoline. And let's say you're jumping and somebody pops Mitchell off and he lands on the ground and his arm is in the weirdest position you've ever seen an arm, and I'm in the shower. What do? Truly, this was their answer. Well, we would drag him in by his feet and have you look at him in the kitchen when you're done with the shower. And I was like, oh my gosh.
That was a proud parenting moment for you right there. Like,
right?
Look what I have taught these guys.
Seriously, yeah. It was so funny. I'm like, not at all. What are you? So we would play this game in the car quite a bit. What's your plan B? Mm-hmm. Again, going back to that 5 years on rape crisis, if any of them had thought, what's my plan B? You know, one situation, a girl had gone to a fast food place. There was 3 young men in polo shirts, short hair. They invited her over to eat with them. She had a great dinner with them. They were super friendly. It started to kind of slushy rain outside. They offered her a ride home. Instead of taking her home, they took her up in the middle of winter up the canyon and said they would leave her there unless she submitted to an assault. Now, plan B, if she'd been thinking plan B, wait a minute, they were supposed to just take me home. This isn't going to plan. She could have said, hey, I need to just stop at the restroom real quick. Can you pull over at Maverick? I just got a text. My grandma's in the hospital. Can you drop me at the hospital? Have a plan to get out of that car. Even if the plan is, if the next stoplight, if I can, I'm going to get out of the car. But if we're teaching our kids constantly about, well, what's your plan B? You know, you go to a party and everybody's having a great time, and then there's alcohol there, and it's turning a different way. What would be your plan B? And first allow them to answer it. What's their thinking process? So let them know that things don't always go to plan. And when they don't, do you have a plan B? And do you even have a plan C? You know, and once we get in that dialogue, then we're going to be a lot more open to understanding where our children are, and even our adult children. Like sending off a daughter to college, you want to or again a son, talk to them about plan B. I talk to them a
I'm
lot
going to
about
go
it.
home tonight and talk about really a plan B.
Yeah.
Like, what is your
Yeah.
plan? Because I think having a plan is better, certainly better than no plan, and also empowering, right?
Yes.
Like, oh, wait a minute. I actually can think through what might happen if, right?
Yes.
And we sometimes don't want to go there.
Yes.
We don't ever want to
Yes.
go there as parents and certainly as children, but we're helping equip
Yes.
children and our teenagers and our young adults with some power. I mean, that's really
Right.
what I'm hearing.
And you reinforce you are a good problem solver. That was a good way to solve that problem. And then come to them with the problem. Say, hey, I want to give you a scenario. Help. You're so good at problem solving. What would you do here? So it's reinforced that life doesn't go to plan very often, but you're good at problem solving. You got this. And so it gives them the ability in that moment to consider there's a problem here, you know?
Right.
And the other one is to practice with your kids, just like practice with your kiddos, put your hand on their leg and having them physically say, don't do that, and remove it. And say, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being, I can't move your hand. 1, it was easy as pie. Where were you at? And they might say, well, Mom, it's you. I can do that. Okay. So, but what if it wasn't me? Like if somebody did that, just imagine in your mind's eye, somebody did that. And they might say, well, I guess it's a 4. All right, let's just keep doing it till it gets down to a 1. And literally just give them that muscle memory of don't do that. Don't do that. Have them get the muscle memory that they have power over who touches them. Or give them a scenario where somebody, if you are a child, no adult needs your help. 0. There's no adult that they come up to a child and said, can you help me? I need directions. Teach your children that an adult does not need help from you. So the answer is no, and walk away to safety. Whether you're walking into a store nearby or walking towards friends, no more explanation, just a no. And teach your kids to be able to just say a no and walk away. And then and not even just children, but like college age girls. Somebody pulls up and says, I am so lost. Can you help me? Sure. Where do you need to go? And they're explaining it. And then they say, my phone is sending me to a way different direction. Can you come over to my car for a minute and look at what my phone's saying? No. Full stop. Not, no, I'm sorry. Not, I've got to go. Allow them the power of what it feels like to say no.
I love that you said that, and I think we actually do the opposite.
I know.
We say, you're going to this family reunion, and you're going to see Aunt Sally. She's probably going to kiss you, and just, I know you hate it, but just like go with it. Versus it's uncomfortable, and you get to honor that discomfort, and you get to say no, and you get to be comfortable being uncomfortable. I mean, we're not great at that. And so I love this idea of reinforcing, like, no, you get to own what's going on for you and honor yourself. I mean, that's very different than I think in our people-pleasing society we typically tend to do.
Right.
So, such a good reminder. And I love that the idea of you keep having move their hand back, until it's a 1, until there's no distress in standing up for yourself. Right. I mean, that's what I'm hearing is the overarching thing is I can stand up for myself. Like I can honor myself. I can have power and stand up for myself. That's what I'm hearing in all of these suggestions.
Right. And another one, like let's say you're with your boys and you love their coach and he's great and everybody thinks he's great and he's going to go grab ice cream and hey, let you guys come with me to get ice cream. And at the last minute, he says, you know what? I want you two to practice a little longer. Joey, come with me. Now, all of a sudden, Joey's alone in the car. And that if you don't teach your children that shift, why did that shift? Why is everybody else staying for a little longer practice? And what does Joey have the power to say there? He can say, I'm going to stay and practice. And if the coach says, no, I want you to come with me, you have to teach your boys and your girls that is a situation where you can say, no, I'm not okay with that. Because it's usually a very subtle move into a position that it's harder for them to get out of.
Yeah. Why do you think that as parents, we're hesitant to teach these skills? I mean, I think there's, and maybe there's not hesitation, but I don't think we're good at teaching these skills. And, and I'll give you my thought, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. I wonder if we don't want children to be disobedient. We want them to be respectful. We want them to be, maybe compliance, not the word, but we want them to be agreeable. And so it's interesting because this to me feels like teaching them to be strong, to be confident, to be self-aware of a situation. But I don't think we're great at teaching this. Why do you think?
I think a big part of it is the fear it could happen to our child. And if we bring it up, it means that it could happen to our child. And that is so scary. That fear is so overwhelming that we say, if I don't talk about it, it couldn't happen to my child.
And so we just avoid.
Yeah.
Because that feels safer.
And maybe that's the family story of avoiding conversations. It could be generationally, hey, our family doesn't talk about hard things. So you might be a chain breaker in the family.
That's right.
And so it might feel really uncomfortable for you. But if you like when I just started doing plan A and plan B with my kids, and their answers were crazy. Really.
Like dragging
dragging him from his feet. And they would have. I know these boys. They would have definitely grabbed him and thumped him up the stairs and all the whole thing. They actually, when we rode in the car, they would say, let's play that game. So it became really familiar to them that it's just normalizing it, that the broader picture is life happens very infrequently according to plan.
Yeah.
Much more frequently. Something in the plan goes sideways.
Yep. If you've lived long enough, we all know that. That's right. So the plan B. So I want to just go back to this listener. As you told your story, I think there's many people that would find themselves in your shoes and that do find themselves in your shoes, that this has happened years ago and that there's still this self-blame and this loathing. What could I have done differently? Should I have done differently? What would you suggest to our listeners who are still living with some of that? Maybe they haven't told their story. They haven't talked about it. What would you suggest? I know.
I would say, please, believe me, it is not your fault. Like, try to hear that and know it and feel it and just experience it. Let it wash over you and say, it's not my fault. And find somebody that you can share your story with. Somebody that feels safe enough to try. And once you get it out into the light, it loses a lot of its power. Sometimes it doesn't lose all of its power right away, but you just keep putting light and light and light on it. Eventually, you will be able to say in all honesty, hey, that was not my fault.
Thank you. When we put light on it and hear that, I heard you say that so many times. It is not your fault. From the beginning to the end, like, it is not your fault. And until our listeners can believe that, I hope they can believe you, because I can feel it from you and I can see it, that it is, you believe it and you know that. So until they can believe it themselves, believe it here, that it is not your fault.
Yeah.
Kathy, I appreciate this conversation so much, whether it's to somebody that has been sexually assaulted, to a parent that has fears about this happening to a child, or a young adult that's in the dating world and recognizes that, gosh, after listening to this podcast, all of these except one were date rape in this 5-year experience that you had. I think this information is invaluable and can help not just help, but really change the course of somebody's life. So I really hope that our listeners will share this, because it is important. It's so important. So thank you for your vulnerability and your willingness to share your story. I really know and believe that when we share our stories, it can change outcomes for others. So I appreciate that so much. Thank you again. And thank you for listening to this special episode. And until next time, take care. That's a wrap for today on the Therapist Question Box. I'm Lindsay Schiss. Thanks for listening. And remember, every question you ask is an opportunity to learn and grow. Brought to you by Therapy Utah.
Hey, this is Kathy Kinghorn. I'm an owner at Therapy Utah. If you'd like to book with one of our trauma-trained therapists, go to www.therapyutah.org. Thanks for listening.